Well,
I'm with Steve, and we're talking about genetics.
and memetics also.
Memetics as well.
Memetics, the idea. Okay, first of all, the idea of memetics is that an idea is known as a meme. A meme is a living thing. An idea actually has its own life. Some ideas survive, some ideas perish, just like genetics. Some genetics survive, some die off. The genetics that aren't suited to the world as well disappear. Those that are better adapted to the world survive. Ideas that are better adapted to the world survive. Ideas that aren't disappear. And a person is an idea, like DNA is a blueprint of a person. It's a description of the way that that person should be. And it organizes the proteins and it makes this complete individual. But what I look at people as is people are basically a combination of all these different ancestors, each idea being combined. Like you're a combination of both of the genetics of your parents.
Right.
They're a combination of all their parents, and so on and so on. So what you get as an individual person is almost a combination of all these thousands and thousands of different diverse ideas. And I guess what I was getting at is that through time, there's been isolation, right? Like certain pools of genes are isolated, like what they used to call at one time Mongoloid features. Now you just say Asian features, right? Or people who are like African who have that particular appearance as what used to be at one time known as, and it's now an unfashionable term, like Negroid features, right? Or Caucasian features. That the reason that they have those features, why is it that we can talk about white? Why is it we can talk about black? It's because there was an isolation historically, and the genetics were within a tight geographical area. And those genetics are more similar within that little pool to each other, like I was saying about Jews.
Right.
Why Jews have these genetic diseases, or why Amish people have certain genetic diseases, is because they have a very small gene pool.
Right.
And or why black people have sickle cell anemia, because they have a small gene pool. It's not that small, but there's more inbreeding within the gene pools. But that's why also that there's more of a likelihood when we talk about altruism, like I was saying before about a burning building, right? You're more likely to want to save your brother than your cousin. You're more likely to want to save your cousin than your third cousin. You're more likely to want to save your third cousin.
You're more
likely.
More immediate family.
Right. But then there are people, there's a way of looking at it like, well, for example, you might be my, 20th cousin, 10 times removed.
Right.
That's still closer than somebody who's Asian.
Right.
And doesn't share anything genetically in common with you, or it goes back a long, long way, like, 50,000 generations, right?
Mm-hmm.
So our genetics are more similar. That's why the altruistic urge is stronger. And it's a very depressing thing to think this way, because, if you just want to look at everything as purely guided by genetics, then you start to think like, does that justify racism? Does that justify me preferring somebody who looks like me over somebody else because they're more genetically similar to me? They're closer to being my brother. They're closer to being my cousin. Very complicated. But I guess the reality is we live in an age where the most important ability today is to adapt to living together. Like where at one time man is like tribal, right? By background. We're mostly tribal, like you look at the Bible. What's the Bible but a history of like the Jews fought the Assamites fought the Hittites fought the Babylonians killed. It's all these little tribes, and you can't even figure out what was different about any of them.
Right.
But there were differences, like these ones were closer relatives than these ones. The Hebrews were closer relatives to each other than they were to the Hittites, and that's why they had to fight. Today, I think the difference is that the world it's so overpopulated, and it just keeps getting more and more populated. And in a city like New York, look around you here. Look at all this.
Do you think
if you're a racist, you can't possibly survive in a city like this.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Purely on from a scientific perspective, right?
Right. Yeah.
Do you think the concept of homosexuality existed even
always
in those particular times,
Yeah.
when the man was close to an ape, you know.
Of course. It exists with animals. I mean, animals are bisexual.
Now, why do you think happened in humanity that it became so open, if you will?
Like
And is it degradation of procreation
no.
theory?
I think it's.
You know what I mean? Like, do you think that the gay people are somewhat not taking advantage of the you know what I mean, the other sex, and not really like flowing with the flow of why we were born for, to procreate, right?
Well, I mean, if that's how you look at what
from the scientific perspective,
from a Darwinian perspective, yes. From
yeah.
Darwin's perspective, yes. I mean, like a homosexual relationship is a terminal point. It's the end.
It's the end of the line,
right,
of that gene pool.
So it means that
if there is no other in the same family,
right.
I'm talking about to continue.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no question about it. It's, if you want to look at everything in terms of fitness, right? Like what's fit, what's adaptive. Being homosexual is maladaptive. It's not adaptive to the environment because it means that line, that genetic line, has to end.
That's it.
But then again, I don't think that science of that type should justify. It shouldn't be used as a justification for bias against people, because people are whatever way they are. But yes, from science's perspective, you would have to look at it as like, maybe it's not that it's. That's funny. Now I mean, you could look at it as like less adaptive, but being adaptive or maladaptive doesn't mean better or worse. It just means something survives or it doesn't, you know? Maybe survival isn't the most, I mean, maybe in the end it is the most important thing from Darwinian evolutionary theory, but we look at life like, I don't necessarily know if I want to have children. Does that mean that somehow
have you decided for sure that you're not going to have children?
No.
Oh.
I don't want to decide ahead of time.
Okay.
I don't want to like try to bring some life into the world just to try to do that.
There's a saying,
I guess
there's no reason to bring children into this world until you've saved it.
Well, then there would be no reason to bring children into the world at all.
To begin with, right?
No, because it's never going to be saved. I just think of it this way: like, if you ever found the person that you felt really comfortable with to do that with, then you would know at that moment that it was the right moment. But you shouldn't be thinking ahead about it, because if you start thinking ahead about it, it's like to try to plan.
Because the times change you too, and it's like, if you just stick to one thing, it's stagnation.
Yeah, I think there are too many people that just give birth to children just to do it, and they don't really have a plan for it. There is no plan, right? There's no right way or wrong way, but I just look at it like, it's like love, right?
How do you
love? You can't say like, I want to be in love. Like, the more you want love, the less chance for you to find it, right?
Exactly. It's just like searching for happiness. There's no such thing as like search for happiness. It's
right.
Like, I mean, if you really look at it as a problem, right? Then it's, then it is a problem. It becomes a problem.
Sure.
And there's no way you can find it, because you're
fundamentally unhappy because your search is making you unhappy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's the same thing with love. It's like love means that you're really, first you're starting because you're in love with yourself, right?
Right.
So if you're in search of love as something outside of yourself, fundamentally you don't even understand what love is, which is it's starting in here anyway. So you're missing the point.
Right.
If you're in love with yourself, it'll have to come to you or it doesn't. You can't look at it like, I'm going to go find it. It's not out there. One thing I always find very funny is, like, how we have this word God, right?
Yeah.
And it's, wait, we should watch out here.
Yeah.
God is one letter away from good, right?
Uh-huh.
And devil is one letter away from evil, right? That's all we're really describing with those terms, is like good and evil.
Yeah.
And when you talk about love and hate, good and evil, order and chaos, it's all descriptions of the same force, right? Like the thing that fractures things or the thing that brings things together, right? That's why we talk about racism, hatred as being evil, because it fractures people. And it's against this fundamental reality, which is that we all are related. We all are. Yeah. We know that if you trace everyone's mitochondrial DNA in the world, it goes back to one mother in Africa like 300,000 years ago or 400,000 years ago. So it's when you hate another person because of their race, you hate yourself, right?
Right.
Because they are you and
that's
you are
right.
them.
That's right.
You know?
Yeah, that's true. Because it's you know, whatever you reflect onto others, it's, you know, immediately coming from you, and like the negativity is in you.
Right.
So you are what you say they are.
That's
you know
right.
What I mean?
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, that's how I look at it.
I agree. Completely.
Now, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
What is your philosophy on the truth? I mean, like truth and
Right.
you know, deceit. I mean, like, do you ever wonder if there's a way for people to stop lying? Like, why do people lie? Do you ever wonder? You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
Does it come from not knowing themselves?
I think it's fear. Simply put, like people lie out of fear mostly, because a lot of people lie, for example, about their life story. They'll say that they knew all these famous people that they don't know. Their father was some famous artist, and it's in their mind because some of it's fear because they want to believe that their life means something. None of us can face the fact that, you know, it's very hard for us to just look at ourselves as, you know, for being what we are, which is just a little person, right? There are very few people who can really say that they knew all these famous people, they did all these incredible things. How many people in the world invented a car? How many people in the world invented a television? Well, you know, Zworykin invented the television tube, only one, right? So I can't sit here and say I did something incredible. I mean, I didn't. I haven't invented anything amazing. I haven't changed the world. I didn't paint the La Gioconda. I didn't paint, you know.
So what separates a genius from a normal person, as we kind of see every day? You know, like.
I think they're much more in touch with their unconscious. The subconscious, as that fellow put it. They are able to dream. They're able to see what's going on around them and dream. And I think part of what it is
the world belongs to the dreamers. You ever heard of this statement? Yeah. Why do you think there's such a statement? I mean,
because when you dream,
there's the realist and there's the dreamer, right?
Well, I think dreams are higher level representations. They're symbolic representations of reality. Like when you dream at night, it's a way of you're taking all the memories from the day and consolidating them, and you're giving them like a label by thinking of it in some way, like, you know, all those Jungian archetypes, like the mother, the shadow, the
Anima?
Yeah, like, oh, right, exactly. All those archetypes, they're ways of symbolically taking all this incredible amount of data that's all around us. Every second we're taking in data, right? And we have to be able to take it and put it into a file, right?
Right.
So that we can store it in the frontal lobe as some kind of memory, right?
Right.
And that's the way I look at, you know. I guess I'm a little lost. What were we even talking about? No. Go back to what your question was. You were saying.
What separates the genius from?
Oh, right. Well, the genius is able to see these high-level symbolic representations of things. They're able to think on a higher order.
And
like they're able to see
that's
it.
Like sixth sense. That's pretty much
maybe
kind of being aware of themselves all the time.
People
you know
talk.
What I mean? It's like a heightened sensation of awareness. I guess that's love, right?
Sure. I always think of it like this, like, you know how everybody talks about Bach, and they said how Bach was able to hear more harmonies in his head than other people. He was able to hear like another order, another level.
Was it Bach or Beethoven that like when he lived in the place and there were children and there was a piano and the children would play and they would be just like sporadically hitting notes and stuff, and they would be unharmonious to the human brain.
Right.
So he would like record everything into his brain and then like wake up next morning and finish them as
pieces of
sonatas.
music.
Yeah, you know.
Very interesting. I mean, that's almost like, you know, we look at Picasso's art that way too. It's very childlike, right? Cubism, the whole idea of it's very childlike.
He was a realist to begin with.
Right.
Remember?
That's right.
So
it's very interesting.
So the human mind. Remember, there's a statement by Picasso. Sometimes you have to lie to tell the truth.
Right.
In other words, it would be painful to tell the truth straight up.
There's a brilliant story by Borges like this. Do you know that story? Do you know the author Borges? You know the Jorge Luis Borges?
No, never heard.
Okay, he's a
Tell me about it.
Argentinian writer, and he wrote a story called Funes the Memorious. And Funes is about a man called Ireneo Funes, who was...
Iranian?
No, his first name was, well, you could say Ireneo or Ireneo.
Uh-huh.
He was a young Argentine boy who, he was a mnemonist. He could remember everything, right?
Uh-huh.
And he could remember, he started out when he was a boy, he could remember everybody's full names, right?
Right.
Like he could meet anybody at one time and he would know their full Christian names, which is very difficult in Latin America because you have, 5 names or 6 names. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
But then he always knew the time at every moment to the second. Like you could stop him on the street, you could ask him the time and he would know exactly what second of the day it was.
Oh,
but
without looking at the watch?
Not looking at the watch, but it's not a true story, but listen to what happens. So at a young age, he was kicked in the head by a horse or something. He had an accident. And then he started to remember everything, not just anything, but every single moment of his life exactly.
To the point of where...
To the point he could look up in the night sky and see the stars and know that it's like 4,589,625,480. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he would see it as the same way that I hold up 4 fingers like this.
Yeah, yeah.
And you see 4. He would see everything and just see it as a single thing, as a single memory, And his memory started to work so fast it actually went faster than reality. So he would have to, it was ahead. So, for example, with a memory, he would have to take that memory and give it a name and give it a number and give it an animal. Like this memory of this car would be rhinoceros 421, and he would, because his mind was working too fast even for reality.
Okay,
right. But the point of the story was, in the end, like, for example, there are all these things in the story about how he learned Latin overnight, and he just took the dictionary and just flipped through it, and the whole sense of the language just immediately went into his head at one shot as almost like one thing. But the point of the story was he couldn't dream because his mind was so clouded with reality. He couldn't get abstract. He couldn't dream. And he couldn't let go of reality. So in fact, he wasn't intelligent at all, because all he was, his mind was just the world, and the world is not genius.
He's more local than abstract.
Well, no. What I'm saying is, think about it this way.
Primitive in the sense that, like, it's like a
genius. Genius is the ability to selectively forget things that are not important.
That's right. Filtering out information.
Otherwise, your brain is the world. It's just the world.
Exactly.
The world is not genius and the world is not stupid. It's just the world. So if your brain is just full of everything that is, there's no genius to that. Genius is like knowing what's significant and knowing what's insignificant.
Right. Exactly.
And remembering and using the significant and forgetting its taste. That's why, like, I can't stand when I meet people and they say, you ask them, like, what's your favorite kind of music? Oh, I like a little bit of everything. Or well, I understand why they say that. They say that because they don't want to actually, they're afraid of telling you what it is that they really like. Because they're afraid.
Why would they?
Why would they be afraid? Because music and culture are very closely linked.
Oh, you mean like
if I say
they don't like to be disliked for the fact that they have made some choices, musical choices?
Yeah, no, because they're like, think about it. There are people who love Frank Sinatra. I mean, you see them all over the place. There are people who love Elvis or Johnny Cash or with the Beatles or whatever. So, and that there's a culture around music. There's a culture around literature. There's a culture around film. Like people who like the same kind of films. You know how there are groups of people who like horror films? There are groups of people who like, for example, there are people who like French art films, and that's like a little club. Or like there are people who like bands that are really into that band, like the Grateful Dead used to have these fans that were really absorbed into their music, right? So when people say, oh, I like a little bit of everything, they don't want you to know that they're like a reggae guy. They don't want you to know that they're a blues type of guy.
Oh, yeah.
They don't want you to know.
So then again...
they're hiding.
Right. Those are the people who are wearing a mask.
Right. But what's interesting about people is their taste. Like, I like octopus, I don't like squid. I like the Beatles, I don't like the Rolling Stones. It's much more interesting when somebody's individual, when they're unique, than when they're just general.
Exactly.
There's nothing interesting about a general person who's like, I like a little bit of everything. What kind of food do you like? Oh, I like a little bit of everything. I mean, that's how much more boring can that be? It's like taking all the colors, when you're painting a painting, you want to use specific colors at specific spots. If you take all the colors and just dump them together, you have just like brown or something like that. Just some like
if you mix everything together, right? Exactly.
There's no art in that.
There's no distinction.
Right. And that's the way I look at genius. Is I look at taste, I look at genius, I look at culture as all being one thing. And I think that great artists, they're very specific in their taste. They're very specific about what it is that what they like and they don't like. That's not to say that they're necessarily inflexible, but they know what it is that they can use, what their tools are. You know, and I think also a part of it is like, this term this German term Zeitgeist. Zeitgeist, literally means Zeit means time, and Geist means ghost. So it means the spirit of an age. There are some artists like Warhol. Like Warhol's Marilyns, the Marilyn Monroes, with all this.
Different colors.
Right. And they look like almost like drag queens or something. They're very androgynous looking.
Yeah.
And he was able to capture the spirit of that time. I don't know, like this guy here captures the spirit of the time. Absolutely. And is quite famous also, as a matter of fact. Absolutely, yes, very well known.
He doesn't like the cameras.
No cameras, exactly, you see?
The fame and no cameras, I mean, how is that?
Maybe a retiring kind of genius, a hidden genius, But everybody knows him.
Really?
Like, oh yeah, absolutely. It's like that guy who dances with that.
What does he do? He dances?
No, just because he dresses that way. It's very unusual. It's very weird and futuristic looking. Like, have you ever seen that guy on the subway who dances with that doll? The guy who dances with the...
Oh, Spanish guy.
Right. That's so
it,
famous. I mean, like, everybody all over the world knows about that guy, right? He's super famous. He's been in movies.
In Times Square, he's got the biceps. Have you seen that guy? Like, he wears almost like a new dress, all colorful and everything. There's in Times Square.
And that's why why are these people famous? Because they're so specific.
Unique.
Yeah, they're very unique. Like...
and they back it up. It's not just for the sake of like some kind of fame or something. This is just them in a nutshell.
That's their paradigm, exactly. That's their medium. And so I mean, that's when you ask about what's the genius, what is genius? I guess it's this ability to, I mean, it's like asking the question, what's love? I mean, there's no definition, but it's the ability to capture something very specific that says something about the general in all of us, right? Like one specific example that somehow is emblematic, symbolic of everything. And you can understand, this is why I love Borges' stories, is because each of the stories is like one little glimpse of a universe, and you can understand the entire universe through 5 pages of writing. That's amazing to me. It's just like that some writer could capture.
5 pages?
Sure. Each one describes, there's another one called The Garden of...
Can you send me an email on this guy?
Sure, yeah.
Thank you, man.
They're really brilliant. There's one called The Garden of Forking Paths that describes string theory. Like in physics, string theory, in artistic literary terms, it's amazing. There's another one called The Circular Ruins. It's about subjectivity. It's about a man who dreams a child into existence. He dreams it in his mind. He creates the child, and he dreams every detail, every hair on its head, every single hair. Imagine how many hairs are on your head.
Right.
If you dreamed until you actually saw this person over and over each night until you dreamed this thing into existence. And then the child becomes bigger than the dream. The child starts to live outside of his dream. He realizes that the child
became him.
Well, actually it's even more interesting that the child that he creates in his mind becomes independent of him and starts to have his own life and starts to live outside of the man's dreams, right? So yeah, he dreams this dream child into existence in every minute detail, until the child is completely formed, almost like a golem. You know what I mean? Like Frankenstein's monster, like the golem made out. The golem is an ancient Hebrew character, right? It's made of clay. It's like it comes from the old Gnostic, like what do you call it? Like cosmographies and such. It's like this idea of you create this being out of clay in every last detail. And then, because it's finished, it actually comes to life. So when the idea, just like a person, right?
Yeah.
You're an idea.
Yeah.
Like your DNA takes the proteins and organizes them into flesh, and you become the thing that you are. So when he's finally finished creating this dream child in his head, the child starts to live independently of his dreams.
And the guy is how old?
We don't know.
He
It's
himself.
a very surrealistic story. It's hard to see it exactly in your head because you don't really know where it's happening. You don't really know how old the people are or anything about them. And all you can picture in your head is something like jungle, like this ancient temple in the jungle with a mystic river flowing down beyond, something that it's just exotic and lush.
Surreal.
Yeah, it's just surreal. And so the man dreams this child into existence, and then he lets it have its own freedom, it have its free will.
Right.
So it starts to do things outside of his dreams. He starts to realize that it has its independence, and that it's not dependent on his dreaming anymore. But he worries for the child because he thinks, my God, what if it discovers that it's just not real, it's just a dream, it's just my creation. So he goes after it, seeking it, trying to find it, to make sure that it's protected. And suddenly he realizes with his own sense of like horror and kind of like a contentment at the same time and a resignation that he himself is being dreamed, that he himself is the figment of somebody else's imagination, as his body transforms into fire and he disappears, he's consumed by the flames. Because that's very much the way that I think people are, is like each of us is a dream, each of us is an idea. Each of us comes into being dreamed by all the dreams of our dead ancestors, all the DNA of our dead ancestors, and we exist for a short time and then we disappear, our bodies are consumed, the energy.
We're somewhat prophesized, right?
Yeah.
It's like we are the living truth of a prophecy.
Yeah. It's true. It's almost like the fulfillment of some
will.
Yeah, exactly. Like almost like a covenant, between people, right? Like a covenant, like a bond. There's this covenant between, all of the humans on Earth to reproduce with each other and combine all these different ideas that people are. I mean, look at the people around here. Each one is so unique and so different looking. It's very rare that you see any two people that actually look the same, right?
Yeah.
Which is amazing because there's 6 billion. How is it possible each one looks so different,
Yeah, that's true.
And it's not just the way that they look. I'm sure like inside their organs are all very different. I'm sure that their minds are all very different. And we have this covenant between us because we can't reproduce with any other race, right? Just with our own.
Right.
To keep recombining the idea, rethinking, like what is human life? Each time that there's a new generation, it's almost like, I'm going to get really abstract here, but John Coltrane, the jazz artist.
Yes.
He used to, if you listen to his music, he would take one set of notes, like 3 notes, and he'd turn them over and try to understand it, invert it, change it, change the order. If you ever hear this song, A Love Supreme, it's kind of funny that's the name of the song. It goes like this. It's like do 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 do.
I've heard about it. Yeah.
And it's just and he keeps changing. He tries to reconsider it in every key. Like what is the love? What
it sounds like? You ever heard of Snap, the music? Snap?
No.
It's like African American rap music.
Yeah.
Snap.
Sure.
Like all in the 90s, beginning of 90s, they were like around, and I don't know why they disappeared. They had 2 albums only.
Yeah.
So they have a song that starts like that.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like
it's very interesting.
And I think that's sort of like that's the way that procreation is, right? It's sort of like humanity, each generation trying to reconsider what it is, like trying to rethink its own idea of itself. Just like I don't know. What is
the meaning of life in your perception? I guess we're covering a lot of subjects.
The meaning of life is to make order out of the chaos, to try to find. Actually, it's Sisyphus. It's like Sisyphus. How I was telling you about the myth of Sisyphus. Sisyphus is the ancient Greek mythological character who pushes a rock up the hill. And he can
record it though.
Right. He can never get the rock to the top, but he keeps pushing. Why keep pushing if you can never get the rock to the top? Watch out. And it's just like life. Like we know we're not going to survive forever. Watch your feet. We know we're not going to survive forever. We know that to live is to die eventually. Everything dies, everything changes, everything falls apart. We know that in the end, entropy rules everything. So any order that we see eventually will become chaotic. Like this tree here, look at this tree. Eventually this tree will be scattered throughout the entire universe. Every single atom will be infinitely distant from every other single atom. It will be infinitely chaotic, right? So life is that thing that resists that entropy. It resists that chaos. Life is love, I guess, then in the end, right? Because we're all...
That's essentially what we're going towards, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, I guess the meaning of life is, in your perception, is love.
I think the meaning of anything that's good is love. And everything that...
Speaking of good, is there such thing as good and evil?
Yeah.
I mean...
Not in absolute terms, but I think...
What I mean? Like, everything just is, if you really think about it. Like, there's certain things that, like, happening, bad things, right? Terrorism and things like that.
Yeah.
It just is. It's a cause and effect thing.
Right.
You know, like Matrix, have you seen Matrix?
Right.
It's like, you know, if I do something right, I may think it's for the good, right? But it may cause the bad onto others, right? So it's somewhat selfish in the way to say that there is such a thing as good and bad. You know what I mean? It just is.
Like take terrorism, for example. Everybody thinks that terrorism is the end result of Islamic fundamentalism. Don't believe it. It's bullshit. What it is the following. You know, the United States has these allies in the Middle East, like the Saudis, the United Arab Emirates, the Egyptians, etc. And we support these dictators that repress people. And there are going to be people who don't like that. And yes, they're going to try to attack you. They don't like the fact that you do business. Like we do business with the Saudi monarchy. We buy their oil. Watch your feet there. We buy their oil. And by buying their oil, we fund their tyranny. We fund their oppression. So we do the thing that Marx said is above all else, right? Marx said economics is everything, right?
Right.
So economically, we can say we don't agree with that system, but we're paying for it. So we can say we don't believe in monarchies, we believe in democracy, but yet we're doing business with evil monarchs. Evil, I use evil.
Essentially supporting it.
Right. We are supporting repression by buying their oil.
Right.
So we can talk with both sides of the mouth. We can say, democracy is everything. Yeah, but we'll buy your oil, you evil monarchs. It's like, so of course...
So it's hypocritical.
Right, and of course there are going to be people who then say, you know, we need to blow you up so you finally get what you're doing. You're supporting... Yeah, that's actually worth a little bit of filming there.
More attention.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
So yeah, I mean, you're right. Is it evil? Like, is blowing up the World Trade Center, like crashing planes into it, evil? I think the problem with it is it's using human lives like they're chess pieces, and it's abstract, right? Because the people that were in that building that day, did they really have to do
9/11,
right? Did they really have to do with the repression of people in the Middle East? Not really, not directly. So I think the danger of terrorism is it's an abstraction. In life, you should deal with concrete realities, not abstractions. The more abstract you get, the more that your message is weak. Your message is strong. Like if I think George Bush is responsible for all the evil in the world, if I really believe that, which I don't, although I do think he's responsible for a considerable amount of it, then if I shot George Bush in the head, in a sense, then I would be doing something that's very logical, right? It's sort of like, you know, he's guilty of high crimes and he needs to be executed, right? I'm not advocating it. I'm just saying, if on the other hand I shot somebody whose name was Peter Bush, who was not even related to George Bush, that would be kind of an abstraction.